I don't know about the glasses, Wes. Are they like clear glasses or are they?
They make me look smarter, Bob.
Well, maybe I should get some too, because looking smart being smart is pretty good, but looking smart is the main thing, right?
That's right.
Right, Brittany? I mean, you know anything about that?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but no, I know lots about that.
And, that's one of the things. I've never had to wrestle with being stunningly handsome or stunningly smart.
What's your Enneagram type, Bob?
I am a 7. I'll start a Broadway show to stay out of having to feel anything.
Yeah.
How about you? What's your Enneagram?
I'm a 4.
What's your Enneagram, Wes?
I haven't taken it since getting sober, and every time I took it before, I was just lying, so I really don't know.
Yes, good. Hey there, and welcome to the recovery crew here at Deep Waters Recovery. I'm Dr. Bob Baer, and today we have a guest, Brittany Bass, who is going to share her recovery story. She has come from a place of not feeling great about herself to being kind of a superstar in the addiction industry, helping a lot of people. And so she's the business development specialist at the Last Resort Treatment Center, one of the best treatment centers known to man. It's also where we do the Braveheart Experience, 2-day intensive experience for men healing from trauma. Because we know that trauma resolution is relapse prevention. It's not the only relapse prevention, but if we don't deal with that stuff underneath the surface, our recovery is probably not going to be very satisfying. And anyway, Brittany is with us today. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff to keep this movement of healing trauma, recovering from dependency, and living a life of authentic juice. Let's live with some creative juice. This is the only one we get that I know of. Now, maybe somebody else knows something different, but let's make the most of this one. I'm glad you're with us today. Welcome to the Deep Waters. There we are. We have, we'll get to Brittany in a moment, but there's Wes Shepard. You are our guest co-host, and glad you're back with us, brother.
Thank you for having me. How you doing, Dr. Bob?
Pretty good so far today. This is going to be a fun one. There will be I won't have to work 1 ounce with you two guys. But a really cool human being, Brittany Bass, is our guest today. Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you.
And also our program director, program manager is Nicole Chargois. I don't know if she's going to bring her camera on or not to give a little bit of information about Deep Waters Recovery and the recovery crew. But otherwise, we're going to hear from her about and just gives. Yeah, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, great. Why don't you tell the folks about how to get a hold of us?
Yeah, Deep Waters would love to hear from you. If you have any questions about our program, comments, or if you want to be part of the podcast, please reach out. You can reach us at 512-677-7847 or email us at admin@deepwatersrecovery.com. Again, that's 512-677-7847 or email us at admin@deepwatersrecovery.com. We post weekly blogs from our community. Our podcast comes out weekly. And follow us on all the social media sites, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. And you can reach our website at www.deepwatersrecovery.com.
Nice. Thank you, Nicole. Nicole is in charge of picking up all the stuff that falls off the wagon, and there's a lot of it. Appreciate you, Nicole. Deep Waters Recovery is a 10-hour virtual healing and recovery program, and the Deep Waters Intensive is a weekend intensive. I named it pretty good. It's intense and it's an intensive, but it's about healing trauma and getting the life back that you want. That's a face-to-face thing we're going to have up and running again in the spring. reach out to us. And also we're really good at referring you to the right place. And we have a person as our guest today that works at the right place. It's called the Last Resort Treatment Center. And we'll probably all talk more about that than anybody cares to listen. But it is one of the places that's really addressing addiction and healing in a really quality, evidence-based, but also community-based way. A sustainable solution is what we're all up to here. So here we have Brittany Bass, and just one of the cool people in the industry. When I say industry, I mean the addiction and healing industry is full of great people. I'll just say that. But then there's some people that have authenticity that's just so obvious. And I'm so grateful to have you on here today. You were born in Austin and raised in Austin. You're the only person. I've never met anybody.
Born, yeah.
Never met anybody else actually born and raised in Austin. And you have lots of experience, like me. I have lots of experience in lots of different lots of different 12-step programs, which is not great. How did you get that experience? Well, I fell off the edge of the earth 12 different ways. And you have a lot of experience with a lot of different treatment centers not just because you're in the business. And I know that there was a point where you got sober in a really strong 12-step based center that you brought deeply into the rest of your work. You're also into running, weightlifting, anything on water. I had a dream one time, I had a nightmare, and I woke up and I said, I'll never say it wasn't true. Hell is weightlifting with that clunk in the gym. That's what that tells you a little bit about weightlifting for me. To me, it's hell. But maybe you can help me turn the corner with that. And my
comfort zone a little bit.
That's right. Thanks. So so you're at the Last Resort. You're the business development specialist out there. You're my go-to. I call you first, and then you say, help folks get in there if it's right for them. And that's the other thing. Not just trying to cram people into a shape that's not theirs. So I think, and also just for the folks listening, the Last Resort is where we do the Braveheart experience, which is a once-a-month intensive for men, very similar to the Deep Waters intensive, which is for men and women. So I guess that is it. I want to turn it over to Brittany. It's just kind of like we're in a meeting together here, although we might interrupt you. Wes and I might interrupt you just to hear more, but I'm really glad you're here. And if you're willing to just kind of tell your story and let folks know a little bit more about you, it'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. And thank you guys for allowing me to come on this podcast. I never really plan anything that I'm going to say. I just say a little prayer before and let whatever needs to flow out. So I told everybody before we went live that I just had therapy at 10 or at 11 o'clock. So pretty open, which is great. So just a little bit about me, like Bob said, I was born and raised in Austin, Texas. I think that the biggest thing for me was I felt relatively disconnected and outside of my body. From 5 or 6 years old. And, I couldn't really tell you what that was. I don't really know if it's, inherited trauma, if it's, just environment, but that was pretty much how I felt. And so I just started grabbing onto anything that I could to feel that sense of connection. And I'm surely there's someone out there that relates with that, right? Because I saw this really, really cool, and I'm sure Dr. Bob, you've seen this, maybe you, Wes, this video that came out a while ago about how the opposite of addiction is connection, and that really resonated with me because I don't really hold well with the belief anymore that you're just an addict because you're an addict. It's like, okay, well, that's probably true, right? But I think that I became dependent because I felt so disconnected from the flow of life that I happened to, land on what ultimately made me feel the most connected and ultimately almost killed me, which was opioids. And we are among a horrific epidemic that I think has always been there. I actually did my research paper for English last semester or last year on this subject about the history of the heroin epidemic. But, today I think it's the worst than it's ever been because we've got the fentanyl being put in the pills, which makes me very grateful to be on the other side of that today. So anyway,
hey, Brittany, I want to throw this out there just for you to cook with or say something about maybe. I didn't get addicted to opioids. I'm addicted to anything to make me feel good, but I have taken them, and it feels the most of any of the drugs like love.
Yeah.
Which is sort of like connection. I mean, I think that's part of the deal.
Absolutely. And, the funny thing about that is, my mom and dad, like my mom got very, very ill with diverticulitis when I was probably 8 or 9. And she was on, a multitude of morphine and just got off and was better than when she was on it. And my dad would get root canals done and hated the way it made him feel. And I've even got some friends in the program who were, meth, and gosh, I don't know how you like that. And it's like, for me, it just, the lights went on.
Yep. And we find the right one that feels the most like a counterfeit God, but it doesn't. I think the rest of the story, if I heard your story right, is it doesn't, it's not sustainable.
It's not. It is not sustainable because we have factors like tolerance and consequences and all of that. So, but prior to the drugging and the drinking, I just wanted to be accepted by my peers. I was not, Miss Popular growing up. I was, I felt very socially awkward, very out of place. And I think I ultimately manifested being that person because of how I felt about myself. So yeah, the way my story goes is I found alcohol and drugs at 14 years old. And there was a progression, but there wasn't a slow progression. Like, at the last resort, we see 17-year-old men who are just as bad as someone who's been doing it for 30 years. And then we see men who are, 60 years old and it's their first time getting sober. So for me, the progression and everything was just kind of all bundled up into one hot mess. And I was taking it balls to the wall, to the limit right away, because I think that it was just, it was building up and building up and building up this disconnection, and we're not wired to live that way. We're wired to be connected to life. And when you go on like that, I always I've heard this saying of like, I needed a drink at 6 years old. And like, that was totally my story because, so anyway, in and out of treatment centers, my story is just like the rest of us. Like the consequences started to pile up on me, ended up in treatment centers. And some of them were very well-meaning treatment centers. And for me...
That's very nice. That's very nice. You're a good marketing person who never wants... They were very well-meaning.
Well, yeah. I mean, therapists that truly cared. I got put in therapy, psychiatry. And my problem was I never could let the smoke clear enough to where I could be honest with these people, It talks about that very thing in the big book.
Careful, Wes. Careful. You're going to make Wes choke there.
And so it wasn't until I literally had to, I guess I was never forced to work the steps. I could always walk off campus, but my bottom was totally internal. And I was at a very, very heavy 12-step facility, and I had an experience. A true experience. So
when you say your bottom was internal, just to translate, I think you're meaning you didn't have to do this from a jail cell, or there weren't 18 car accidents and right, not a lot of legal consequences. It was an internal horror. Yes?
It was an internal horror because I think that I have been feeling the way that I felt when I hit that point to a lesser degree for most of my life. And so I think that, having that I think that worked to my advantage. I was either going to kill myself, or I was going to, accept this weird path that was presented to me that I didn't know what was going to happen.
It is weird. It's bizarre. It's so different from the regular rhythm of popular culture, right?
Right. Absolutely. And so that is why we all who are in recovery from anything, we have to evolve. I see people who are in the recovery rooms with 20, 30 years sober who have never stepped foot inside of a therapist's office, never would even dare to do that, because if it's not in the first 164 pages, it ain't gonna work. And it's like, on the flip side of that firm 12-step foundation was what launched me into a whole world of healing, because I couldn't do it without it. But at the same time, at about year 3, it wasn't enough for me.
You lost your medication.
Exactly.
I can't inject myself with alcohol, drugs, wild ass love and sex and gambling. I'm left with me. So I've either got to lock myself down some way, which, some people use AA in that way, to just rigidly lock themselves down. And you're right, we need it. But if we're going to grow, we've got to deal with those feelings that are unresolved underneath the surface, right?
Exactly. And Bob, that's exactly what happened to me, because I had such an intense experience from working the 12 steps. And what that looked like for me was everything became funny. And I was like, I haven't laughed in years. And it was just the sense of sisterhood with the women that I was in there with, and the sense of connection. And, but as all things, they're, I don't want to say that the shine of AA ever dulled, but we are genetically wired for more, in the sense of more healing and more growth. And I just hit a wall. Yeah. And, I actually had a relapse after I got out of that recovery center, because I adopted this belief that to be a recovered woman, I do not need to be sharing about my struggles. I need to be there on the firing lines for the new women, and be that recovered woman. And so I had a slip for about 3 weeks. I got back into the program, thank God. And it really opened up this door of being so transparent, because that is what has helped me. I don't walk up to random person on the street and say, this is how I'm feeling today. But what I'm talking about is that allowing my circle of friends, allowing my coworkers, I so appreciate that question that, that Corbin asks Kyle and I every week, how are you doing professionally and personally? Because they go hand in hand, I'm kind of jumping around a lot, but I've worked at some other recovery centers where the bottom line was get the patients in the door, get the patients in the door. And even the patients, like they suffered with that motive in place, and where I'm at now is it's a family, and they give a shit how I'm doing personally. And so, and everyone is very much invested in their own healing. So that's just a little shameless plug about, who we are there. But
how about it? Let's take that shameless plug further. There's nobody there. It's a packed house out there. That's just the evidence right now. This organization who makes a choice, and it's being led by Corbin Bighart, is who you're talking about, is the executive director out there. That's a good model. Sometimes you have to wait a minute. We're not going to focus 100% on the bottom line here. We're going to get real with each other and make sure that we're living our lives together and taking a breath. And then somehow magically, not magically, it takes a lot of effort. And it's a kind of leadership that you just talked about. It's called transparent leadership or vulnerable leadership, and trusting that you're going to get inspired people to be with you. And then you can trust that what they say to the clients is going to have so much more resonance. I mean, it's just, but, you know, very few organizations understand.
That is very true. And, you know, on a personal level, when I would, you know, when I came back in, and I think it took me a while, because I had this therapist when I first got sober who had 20 something years sober. And I remember sitting there just being like, you know what, like what you're talking about is not in the big book. This is inaccurate. And he was like, well, who's the one, he essentially said, who's the one that just had a relapse, you know? And so then I started to kind of think more along broader terms. And so I started to share in meetings, not complaining, but, you know, I felt like I had a mission to show people in recovery that you are a human, you know, and you are going to go through some real life stuff. Like, but if you remain transparent and you help the next person, you're going to get through it, and you're going to become, it's going to build more character. It's going to build more resiliency. And some examples of that for me, I said, when I first came in the rooms, the one thing that will take me back out is if my dad dies. My dad was my best friend, my biggest enabler. Just, he was just, you know, everything to me. And here I am in September 2016, and he's on his deathbed, and I'm thinking about like how I can be there for him. And I had a really cool spiritual experience around him dying, and I was able to walk through that, you know, from this small idea. Well, it's a big idea, but this small idea of, I'm just going to start being transparent. I'm not going to hold back.
Yeah. It's in the, whatever the opposite of transparent, I guess it's, you know, it says in the big book, even those with grave mental disorders can recover if they have the ability to be honest, right? What it does is cracks open that door that was also keeping, I'm going to use a word, a very controversial word, everybody brace yourself. It was also keeping God out, right? Whatever your perception of that is. But because I was trying to run my life with this little tiny bit of information and was closed to anything else. And that, you know, with recovery, I've now opened up to maybe now I have 2%.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully if I keep hanging out with people like you, I'll get to 3 by the time. But, you know, the idea is to stop trying to run the show so much and hide. You know, it takes a lot of energy to hide that shit, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. It's just exhausting too. And, you know, I was speaking about God. I was so angry at God when I first came in. I've never been a non-believer ever. I've always known in my heart that there's been something out there, but it was agnosticism and feeling like God was just this, you know, and I felt this way in recovery for a long time. If I'm not doing a nightly every night, if I'm not checking the boxes, for God, then God's not going to show up for me. And the truth is that God is, what I have found is that God is in everything. And it took me like 5 years to get there of like, oh, this is what this means. Of God is everything or God is nothing. Mm-hmm. So for me in my recovery, let's say I make a mistake, right? That too can be turned into a deeper experience with God. Like there's no right or wrong way to do this, which is so cool. And it took me so long and it was so much pain to get to that point.
Yeah. You better get it right, Wes. You better get this shit right, mister.
Yeah.
Well, no, I love what Brittany said, you know, like coming out of rehab, going through rehab, you know, when you get out, there's automatically this kind of like, oh, he's healed now, everything's fine. You know, he can't show, or, you know, she can't show these, you know, emotions. And like you were saying, opening up and being, you know, more transparent, and, you know, especially like sharing in the meetings and stuff. And, you know, when I was in rehab, the guys that I looked up most to, and the guys that I think were the most benefit to the entire group, were the guys that were in there being the most vulnerable possible, you know, that they could be. And they were the examples of, you know, I wish everyone could just be exactly like them, because then everyone would just gain so much more. But, you know, when you're in it and you're supposed to be feeling all this stuff and progressing, and you've like, I should be getting this by now. You kind of like tend to stuff it down a little bit, because you don't want anyone to know that, you know, maybe this isn't, maybe I'm not doing it right, or
you're not doing vulnerability correctly.
Right. Exactly. So, you know, that resonates with me a lot, because it's, you know, it's still something I work on for sure. But I do find that it's when I'm vulnerable and when I am transparent, it's 10 times more beneficial than, you know, and showing weakness than being like, no, I got out of treatment, but I'm not fixed, and no, everything's not okay. I still need to do this shit every single day. So yeah, I mean,
because it's not, I don't think it's just us tough guys and that got the be strong, be tough, get it figured out. I think women get a lot more be nice, though. I think, I'm not sure about that. I mean, we get so much, we can't get it. That we can't be ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I really appreciate the work, Bob, that you do at the Last Resort. Like, I'm going to go ahead and say that you can never stop doing that. You can never leave. And, you know, the Last Resort is like Hotel California. It's like, you're not our clinical director anymore, but you're still involved in some capacity. So you're never allowed to leave because of the work you do out there. But at the same time, you know, all jokes aside, like I love this movement of men's healing. And when I say that, it does not mean that I don't love women's healing, but I truly think that, you know, women have an easier time being vulnerable with other women, and men are just left stuck that I've got to play this role. I've got to show up. And this is an issue that's really important to me, because I have a young son that I'm raising. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you know, how do you raise him to not, you know, just be so open that other men take advantage of him, but how do you not harden him and condition him to not, you know? So I really, really appreciate Braveheart and the work that is being done. Yeah.
Well, we live in a culture that doesn't have any initiatory stuff to invite men into a more authentic place within them. It's just not in our culture anywhere. We get be tough, be strong, figure it out. That's what we get. That's the initiation. And we've been at war for thousands of years. We're like, let's find something to fight, you know, and you know, life is tough sometimes, but I would say about 0.001% of it requires an intense warrior approach, right? But we're using it 90% of the time. Let's find something to fight. So, you know, that I just read this morning in the Big Book, we ceased to fight. I think that's what the quote, isn't it? We ceased fighting. Yeah. What? No, wait a minute. I got to find something to do battle with. But yes, we're on that, Brittany. We're on it. I promise you. Men need help. And it's, you know, after the women's movement and the women said, we're not taking this shit anymore. I think men started to at least turn the attention inward a little bit here to do some healing together. And the Last Resort's the only place that's doing that kind of work. And that's a testament to the vision that the owners there, Ann and Bill and Corbin and Peter before him, it takes some risk. I mean, and you're in marketing trying to explain to people what we're doing. It's not easy to explain, but we'll keep working on it. But I also, yes, so we're on that. And I think you're probably on helping women heal from their list of shit too. Because yes, women sometimes can access the tears, but sometimes women, in my experience, have difficulty maybe accessing and really healing from the deep trauma that some of it's embedded for thousands of years of patriarchy, right? I mean, it's, but but and the looking good thing and being nice and all that, that's hard to transcend too, right?
Absolutely. And, it is so generational, because I realized that I adopted this belief that if I just looked good enough, if I was just, this much desirable to men, or, I mean, that plays into that whole seeking something to feel connected, and being a little skewed in the ways that I sought that. But I mean, I spent a significant amount of time focusing on the outside as a distraction to what was really going on. And I will tell you, like, those little things that happen as we grow up, right? Whether it be, I don't know, I'm not even going to give examples, but they all add up and they all sit there. And it's a matter of like, at what, I'm reading A New Earth right now again, and it is so parallel to where we are in the world right now.
Yeah, that's
and
Eckhart Tolle, right?
yes, it's and I've read it before, but this time it has new meaning to me. And at a certain point, you have to stop allowing that pain body, as he calls it, to feed itself with your traumas, with your old belief systems. And, we are a collective society in this country, especially, where we are not connected to our bodies. We are up here and we want more. And, I get so worked up about everything that's going on right now, from politics to social injustice to everything going on, greed, that like the solution is just so simple. But
well, it's simple, but it's complex in a certain way. I think people, when the guys come out of Braveheart and they have this look and they're much more open and transparent, and I think you and others probably wonder, what the hell are they doing there? And I won't tell you all the details of it, but we're helping them into their body. Yeah. Because that's where the trauma is stored, right? And hurt people.
Oh yeah.
That's what's going on in the world right now. Hurt, wounded people without support or a place to heal that are projecting their hurt onto the world and doing battle. Let's fight this out outside of ourselves. Jung said anything that's unresolved within us will appear outside of us, and we will call it fate.
Oh yeah.
Will say that bad shit out there is just happening to me.
Well, yeah, and it's almost like the Buddhist theory of what karma truly is. The same results will show up in our life until we're ready to sit there and really look within on what is this about.
Yeah. So Brittany, do you feel like you've unpacked the part of the story that you wanted to share with us mostly? Because I got a couple of topics I'd like to poke around at with you.
Absolutely. And gosh, I feel like I don't spend as much time on what it was like anymore, because I just don't live there anymore. But yes, I mean, key points are, I felt disconnected. I did what we do to feel connected. It didn't work. And then I started this journey of healing.
Man, that's a good boy, you are marketing, because you just got it into 3 sound bites.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. So, I was just briefly this thing that you wrote in your blog, and just for everyone, this is going to come out, and then a couple days later, Brittany's really personal blog post is going to come out. And you were in a Catholic school at one point, and you got identified as being unholy. I thought that struck me as like, wow, that's cool. This is a cool person, got identified as unholy as an adolescent or even earlier, right? Right.
Well, we were taught, certain things that I just did not jive with. And
how surprising.
Right. And I said to myself, if this is, and here's the thing, this is no attack on any religion or any way of worshiping God. But the way that I took that was, if I don't do things damn near perfect, I am not going to be blessed. And so I might as well just, run the show, because God is already predetermined that I am not one of his chosen ones.
How blasphemous you are and how unholy.
Well, yeah. And then in that school, I had an experience. I shared about this in the blog, but you know, I confided in my homeroom teacher, you know, I think I have depression, and she went and told the whole class. And so it just kind of shows where that particular institution was at with things, you know.
And what do you think? So you're not alone, right? We know that. I have a Catholic story of my own. It's not about them, right? This whole thing came out of this guy named Jesus that was probably a beautiful human being, but certain shit has been stacked on it.
Yeah.
And we're all trying to get, huh?
Humans,
humans grabbed a hold of it, and man, built an organization around the truth, and then you can't even see the truth through the fog. So what do you think that does to a kid that gets, and you also have had some bullying experiences, we getting told you're unholy by some powerful nun or whatever, and being identified as being, and then a depressed kid, right, that's trying to be vulnerable and then gets shamed for it, publicly shamed for it. What do you think this brings, what do you think this translates to for any person, not just you, later on in life?
Bitterness. And
say it again.
Bitterness and a lack of vulnerability and an attitude of, I'll figure it out on my own.
All the things that are the main character defects of an addict. It builds the fertile ground for all of that stuff that we did, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I say this, you know, I say this all the time, where in a way, as you know, as addicts, alcoholics, you know, whatever our thing was, we are kind of the chosen ones, because we had something on our back where it's like, I'm going to die if I don't do something different. Yeah. Whereas, you know, little Susie down the street is just resentful and has never drank alcohol, but she lives her life in misery. And like, that's what the addiction is about. Is it's not even about what you took that you couldn't stop taking. It's about what's underneath it all. And so thank God for drugs and alcohol, right?
Yep. And I would like to, I'm going to be the one that says that in this podcast. And that is, so here's the deal. We like to, especially at Deep Waters and at Braveheart, we like to make the distinction. Our trauma, the shit that happened to us as kids, did not cause the disease. Now, there is an outside chance that it did, but don't tell anybody, because that's all an addict needs is an excuse, right? Oh, my dad hit me with a belt, and that's why I'm an addict. No. Here's why I drink, because I'm alcoholic. And the reason for that is because then there's a program for me. Right. I can do this healing program. So especially folks early in recovery, the message that my trauma like caused some of this is a very tricky thing. And that's why the old timers in AA don't want to hear that shit, right?
Right.
So I want to be the one that says that in this podcast. It also says in the literature that we should seek outside help. That's not an exact quote, but maybe you know what that is. But then there's nothing in the big book that is harsh in any way. It's a beautiful piece of poetry that's inviting us to take these tools and use them as a way to create a life of freedom. So. Yeah, but we can't blame our addiction on the trauma. I want to make sure somebody said that.
Yeah, no, I think that you definitely bring up a very good point. And you know, when I'm marketing Braveheart, marketing The Last Resort, you know, this is what I believe is that, you know, we certainly like cannot say that their trauma caused this addiction, right? But when it's not healed, when it's not addressed, it can lead to a relapse. And that's something that's controversial for me to say, because I had always heard that, or I had always thought that you relapse because you stop going to meetings, you stop doing your nightly, you stop calling your sponsor, you stop sponsoring. But what about those people that are doing everything that they possibly can in their program and they're still suffering?
Those are the two things that get missed in that conversation. You and I have been around a while. We've heard, why'd you relapse? Stop calling my sponsor. Stop going to meetings. It's like a chant, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple other things. One I got from Bill Wigmore, Father Bill Wigmore. He said, you didn't find anything of meaning in your life. That's an important piece that we don't emphasize in recovery a lot of times. Did you find something that's passionately meaningful for you? And the other thing is, I got to deal with some of the stuff underneath the surface. I mean, that is, yeah, it's good. I better be going to meetings and talking to my sponsor and working the steps. Yes. But if you want to give yourself the real bonus, find some meaning and heal the trauma.
Yes, absolutely.
So Wes is just a little bit newer, and he's actually advanced in doing podcasts and he's like a superstar. He's got a show. I don't know if I said that. He's got another show that you can search. If he wants to say something about it, he can. But, you are kind of in the inquisitory, is that a word? Inquisitory?
Sure.
Phase of recovery. So I just wonder if you have anything cooking.
I mean, it's, a lot of my experiences growing up were, being bullied, just that getting shut down and believing all this stuff that was told to me by my peers were true. That I'm still trying to, kind of think about how that didn't, at least maybe not create the disease within me, of alcoholism, but, I still think maybe it kind of led me to, get there a little quicker for sure. So that's just kind of what I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around. Especially when I was at TLR, that was the same, whenever guys would come back, there was a couple guys that were, second, third time guys there. And that was what they always said. It was, stop praying, stop meditating, stop doing the nightlies. And, sometimes it was a few months, sometimes it was a week before they were back in the program. So, I get that that's, the trauma is the big, not addressing it could lead to the relapse. But I don't know if you can elaborate on that, Bob, about the disease versus, why we started drinking or using based on that trauma that we had growing up, the bullying that Brittany encountered, the bullying that I encountered, because it is easy to point to, when you're looking for something, but it's just kind of hard to distinguish between, the real disease and the reasons.
Yep. Well, it doesn't matter, really. That's the point. You can blame it on it if you want, but if you're going to do that, my recovery stops. Mm-hmm. It just stops. It's not an issue, especially early in recovery. The idea that my trauma the trauma going on in my life has anything to do with me getting sober and staying sober, it's not a useful discussion. I was in an AA meeting this morning, and there was a couple of people in there that fairly new, and it was all about the external stuff. And as long as that continues, how do I get my attention off of all this external stuff and onto actually working the program so I can get sober enough to work on the reason that all of this shit is happening around me, which is related to trauma.
Yeah. I mean, what I would ask is male or female, how is it working for you? Like, how are you feeling inside? Staying stuck in that. And, I think that we are wired to experience things. And once there's enough pain, pain is a great motivator. And, Wes, to kind of answer your question, I don't know if we really fully know yet, but what I do know is that, I will just speak briefly about someone that I know who's very dear and close to me, but there was some traumatic events that happened. There were 3 siblings. One of them ended up, with substance abuse. One of them ended up, parenting the other 2, and the other one ended up very successful in her business. And so I think that for some people, I think it's a combination of if the trauma is there and if the genetic predisposition is there, it makes that perfect storm. Because I know plenty of people who had significant trauma and never became an addict. They may have wrecked their life in other ways, but so I think that they kind of both fuel each other. And I think Bob brings up a great point, is that, I mean, we can analyze it all we want, but it's there.
Yep. So we can, sometimes it's a genetic predisposition. Sometimes it's learned behavior. We watched other people. I grew up watching it. It was like normal, right? And then there's we do it enough and we become a pickle. We used to be a cucumber and then we drank enough to be a pickle. Those are the reasons. If you have to have a reason, because then we can address it. You have a disease that has 3 parts to it. The main couple of them are an obsession of the mind, right? And a physical, they call it an allergy, which is a little hard to get our mind around sometimes, but it's like, I can't do this without wanting to do it again, and then a little more, and it progresses, right? And there's also the spiritual piece of this, which is advanced stuff. But yeah, so here we are, the 3 of us having, let's see, coffee, electronics. What else? That's about it today. So I'm relatively sober. We'll say I'm sober from the stuff that's going to take me down quick.
Yeah.
The food stuff, but don't give me. I'll get another. I don't want to own any of that right now. But so Brittany, just a couple. I'd like you to say a little bit more about pulling off relationships and being a mom, and how does one do that? How do you teach Wes and I how to have a healthy relationship and be a good parent? I know a little bit about parenting, but
Yeah,
give us the short workshop on healthy relationships and recovery.
Oh man. Well, in the case of my, if you're talking about intimate relationships, but this can kind of bleed over into friendships and everything. But my imperfect people who both have our own issues, and we definitely have our disagreements at times. But again, it goes back to that transparency thing and communicating and talking about things. And then over time, we have built this, really awesome partnership. And, there's times when, just like with a friend, he pisses the hell out of me and I piss him off too. But at the end of the day, if we can sit down and own our own feelings, not play the blame game. And it's the same thing, my closest friends, I have no problem telling them, hey, what you said or what you did hurt my feelings. Let's talk about it. It's these fair weathered friends that I feel like I have to filter myself around and be nice, Bob, like you said, and hold in what I'm feeling that end up fizzling or imploding or whatever. So it's all about the transparency, and it's all about, of course, other characteristics, love, loyalty, honesty, all of that. But I think when you find someone, whether it's a friend or a romantic relationship that you can truly be authentic in, I think that that's the key. I used to, as far as romantic relationships, think that it was just going to be this like Disney movie of, we're happily ever after. And that's certainly some people's experience, but for someone like me.
Anybody you've met?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Well, you're asking me, has anyone? Well, let me tell you this. Yes, but typically there's things that we don't know about, and it's about the image, right?
Thank you. Those Joneses look good with that really freshly painted white fence. I really like that.
Cleaver family.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it can be done, Wes. Healthy, calm relationships apparently are possible in this universe.
That's bullshit.
All right.
Thank you so much for letting me be on here.
Absolutely. We're not quite done with you because, I think we are moving toward that, Brittany. But because the other question I had was around taking it easy in recovery. I think there's a combination. I didn't know you before recovery, but I think you've probably always been somewhat of a give another person the benefit of the doubt kind of thing, and kind. I think you're just a genuinely kind person. So you probably had to work on other shit where I've had to kind of learn how to, my daughter actually being a dad has knocked some of the selfishness off of me. It's like, all right, what do you need, sweetie? It's like, yes, I have a lot to do, but what do you need? These are unheard of concepts for a guy like me. And so, you know, I just think that taking it easy in recovery is the way you say it, not being rigid. I heard you say that a couple of different times, like you're not going to put down other treatment centers. You're not going to put down other religions. You want to make sure that people have their space. And I bet you're that kind of a parent too. So I don't know. It's my way of saying thanks for all the work that you've done to get to this place.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, man, taking it easy. I think that, you know, before, and I hate this term, but, you know, I guess you could say I was failure to launch, right, before I got sober. And played Grand Theft Auto all the time and woke up at 2 o'clock. And so I think that I adopted this need to be busy and to do more and to feel like I'm a productive member of society, like the American dream or whatever. But then on the flip side of that, we also have to learn how to, you know, I mean, God, it's okay if I want to take a nap one day, right, on a Saturday. Like,
oh, we can't have any of that. You got to,
I know,
pull up your bootstraps. And
exactly, I got to be on the firing line all the time. But the truth is, you know, and it's so commonly said, but so not as commonly understood, is that you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself.
Put the what's the other cliche? Put the air mask on first before you try to take care of the kid next to you, right? There's a bunch of those.
Exactly. But it's so true, because if I am, you know, and I've seen it in the industry that I work in, if you're not helping yourself and you're just go, like you're going to burn out or you're going to implode. And
take it easy. You hear that, Wes? Take it easy, mister.
Trying.
All right. So, Brittany, wow. Thank you so much for bringing your good information, spirit, your story. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of that. So thanks for being here. So we want to make sure folks can reach you for just to connect or to as business development at the last resort, or just for women in recovery that want a person that's been there, you know. So what's the best way to get a hold of you?
My phone, it is 512-948-6403. Or by email, it's Brittany, BRITTANY, @lastresortrecovery.com.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. The lastresortrecovery.com is the website. So it's I think it's just last. I don't think there's a the. Oh, that's right. Last Resort Recovery.
Yeah, and I just want to say, as someone who's actually been through the program and the treatment out there, how amazing it is out there. Every one of the staff is awesome. I mean, I can't speak highly enough about the place, the Braveheart experience. Everyone that's out there is really gives a crap about you, from the counselors to just the people that you hang out with, you know, by the smoke pit. You know, it's truly an amazing place. So if especially if you're in Texas and you're looking for a place, I can't say enough about it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for saying that. And yeah, we do great work, and we do it for, you know, an affordable price. And if you know someone who's a male who's struggling with their addiction, you know, we'd be a really great option. So please reach out.
Yep. And you can reach out to us as well. And, you know, we do a lot of great work at Deep Waters Recovery, but that place is called The Last Resort for a reason. It's like the real deal. If you want to, like, if you're going to spend the money, you might as well get that stuff internalized for a sustainable version of healing. And that's what they're up to out there. That's what we do too. Not quite the long-term woodland setting, nice ranch situation. It's a different thing we're up to. By the way, if we haven't put Nicole asleep yet, are you still there, Nicole, with us?
Yeah. Yep, I'm here.
Yep. Almost. I caught her just before dozing. Why don't you let folks know how they can reach us again, please? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Bob, and thank you, Brittany. It was awesome. Deep Waters would love to hear from you. If you have any questions about our program, comments, or if you want to be part of the podcast, our number is 512-677-7847, or email us admin, that's ADMIN, @deepwatersrecovery.com, and just visit our website, deepwatersrecovery.com. We post weekly blogs from our community. Our podcast comes out weekly, and you can follow us on all the social media sites, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. Please reach out.
Nice. So, yep, we're here for you if you're ready. It's not just if you don't have to be a wild, crazy addict like the three of us to seek some healing. Most of us have some things that we're struggling with and need some support. At Deep Waters, we have a recovery program that's 10 hours a week. Right now it's virtual. And we also have the face-to-face weekend intensive called the Deep Waters Intensive, DWI. We kind of like that, but it's so reach out, and it's so glad you were with us today. And thanks again, Brittany and Wes. And so you're in the deep waters now.